I still remember the way his words landed sharp, sterile, and completely unearned. "Lily, I need to see you in my office." No greeting, no smile. Just the bark of someone who had never built anything himself but somehow believed he owned the air in this building. I followed him through the glass hallway like I'd done 100 times before, but this time, it felt like walking into a trap. Ryan Monroe had been CEO for exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks since his father, the man who'd hired me 11 years ago, retired early for health and travel. I knew that really meant he'd had enough, and maybe, after what happened next, I couldn't blame him. We barely made it through the door before he said it. "You're fired." Just like that. I blinked, not because I was shocked, but because of how casual he made it sound. Like it was a scheduling update, not a career-ending ambush. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he said, flipping through a folder like he was deciding what sandwich to order. "We don't need lazy people like you dragging this place down. You've been here a long time. Time to move on." That word lazy, I could have laughed out loud. Lazy? I'd built this firm's client services division from the ground up. I'd negotiated over 100 contracts, brought in their biggest accounts, and trained most of the junior execs currently occupying the floor outside his corner office. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I did something that must have unnerved him more than screaming ever could. I smiled. A slow, calm, very deliberate smile. "Understood," I said, like I'd just been offered a coffee instead of a corporate shove off a cliff. "Have a nice day, Ryan." I turned and walked out, passing my stunned coworkers. I gave them a quick, subtle shake of my head, "Don't make a scene." Not yet. Inside, my heart was pounding. But I didn't cry. I didn't even tremble. Because Ryan thought he was ending my story. I drove home in silence, hands steady on the wheel, even as my mind raced like a freight train. 11 years. That's how long I'd given to that company. Through holidays, through my divorce, through my dad's cancer diagnosis, I had been loyal, present, relentless. And they tossed me out like a used coffee filter. But I wasn't mad. Not yet. I was curious. Why now? Why fire me days before we were supposed to close one of the biggest contracts in the company's history? I was scheduled to finalize the deal with Kingsley Global this Friday. That deal alone would bring in enough revenue to fund the entire sales department's bonuses. Had Ryan even looked at the contract? I doubted it. And that, right there, was his first mistake. I set my keys down and poured myself a glass of water. Not wine, not yet. No anger-fueled impulse decisions. That wasn't my style. Never had been. Instead, I grabbed my phone. The number I dialed wasn't saved under a name, but I knew it by heart. It rang once. "Lily?" "Mr. Monroe." The real one. As in, Ryan's father. The man who founded the company and made me director of accounts when I was just 34. "I assume you haven't been looped in yet," I said. There was a pause on the line, the kind of silence that carries weight. "What happened?" "Your son fired me this morning, told me I was lazy, said I was no longer needed." The silence broke like glass. "He what?" 9:04 a.m. No warning, no conversation. "Just clean out your desk." Another pause, then a rustle of papers, the sound of drawers opening, something crashing to the floor. "Lily." His voice came back, sharp now, controlled rage bubbling under the surface. "Did he read your contract before doing this? Does it sound like he did?" He swore under his breath. "The Kingsley account. You're the only authorized negotiator." "Correct. Page 11, subsection C. A clause you insisted on after the Debrex disaster. Nobody else can close it but me." There was no reply for a long time. Then, in a voice cold enough to slice metal, "Let me handle it. You stay quiet. For now." "I'm already quiet," I said, "but not idle." And I wasn't, because what Ryan had just done, it wasn't just offensive. It was tactically suicidal. The Kingsley deal wasn't just big, it was exclusive. I was the only person legally approved to finalize it. And now? He'd just kicked me to the curb with zero understanding of what that meant. He'd pulled the trigger, and the bullet was circling right back to him. I opened my laptop and started reviewing the contract. Every line, every clause, every bit of leverage I'd built into the negotiations. By the time I finished, I had a plan. By 10:17 a.m., the first of many voicemails came in. From Ryan. I didn't answer. Oh no, he was going to sweat a little first. At 10:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Ryan Monroe, Lily, hey, I think there may have been a misunderstanding. Let's connect? Buzzed again at 10:22. Again at 10:35. By 10:47, I had 7 missed calls his. Legal, reception, accounting. Each one more frantic than the last. I didn't pick up. Instead, I poured myself a second cup of coffee and waited. Timing is everything in these situations. Too soon, and it looks desperate. Too late, and people stop caring. At 11:06, I got a message I did open. Mr. Monroe Sr., Ryan has a meeting with Kingsley's CEO at 1:30. He doesn't know yet he can't legally close without you. If you want to watch the chaos unfold, now's the time. I smiled. I'd thought about going in, sitting across the table just to watch Ryan squirm. But the better play? Let him walk in confident and walk out crushed. I changed into a sharp navy blazer, touched up my lipstick, and drove downtown. Not to the office. To Meridian, a quiet little corner bistro across from our firm's building. Corner table, window seat, perfect view of the executive boardroom, 3 stories up. At 1:12 p.m., the Kingsley team arrived, 3 tailored suits with briefcases that probably cost more than my car. They were ushered into the glass-walled room like royalty. At 1:26, Ryan walked in. And my God, the man was smug. Hair freshly styled, navy blazer trying way too hard, and a folder under his arm like it held the secrets of the universe. He looked like every overconfident man I'd ever worked under, until the moment his entire world unraveled. It started at 1:34. I watched it happen. Kingsley's CEO flipped to the signature page of the contract, then frowned, said something, pointed to the clause. Ryan leaned over, cocky at first, then paused. That's when his face changed. His mouth opened, closed. He flipped pages like they might magically say something different. They didn't. At 1:38, the CEO stood. His team followed. No handshake, no contract, just a curt nod as they left the room. Ryan was left standing there, blinking, like a man who just realized the elevator cables had been cut and he was already falling. My phone buzzed. Mr. Monroe Sr., you'll be hearing from me shortly. We need to talk. Oh, I bet we do. But he wouldn't be the only one. Because at 1:46, I got a second message from Kingsley's executive assistant, Marcia D., EA to CEO. Hi, Lily. Mr. Sutherland would like to meet with you privately this afternoon. He said, and I quote, I only trust the person who actually knows what they're doing. You available at 3? Was I available? I was ready. At exactly 3 p.m., I stepped into the penthouse suite of the Grand Clarendon Hotel. It wasn't even subtle. Kingsley's CEO, Richard Sutherland, had relocated his entire schedule just to meet me off-site. Neutral ground. No boardroom power plays. Just 2 professionals, and a very expensive cup of espresso between them. He stood as I approached. Lily, he said, extending his hand. The woman who almost saved us a wasted afternoon. I shook it firmly. Richard, I trust your lunch meeting didn't go as planned. His brow lifted, amused. You could say that. I asked your replacement one simple question. Where's Lily Carter's signature? He froze. I laughed softly, and for the first time all day, it felt real. We talked, not just about the deal, but about integrity, about how long relationships like ours take to build, about how quick men like Ryan are to burn bridges they've never crossed themselves. You know, Richard said, leaning back, we've dealt with 3 account executives in the last 5 years, but I've only ever trusted one, you. I appreciate that, I said honestly. He nodded, then paused. So, where are you now? I hesitated for a breath. Then I told him, let's just say, my contract with Monroe Crane ended this morning, but I've had a few other offers. His eyes sparkled. You ever considered joining Kingsley directly? I smiled. Wouldn't be the worst way to spend a Wednesday. We didn't sign anything yet. But he made it clear, if I wanted a seat at Kingsley's table, it was mine. And just like that, my career wasn't just saved, it had evolved. Better title, higher pay, more autonomy, and most importantly, no more middlemen pretending to be the boss. On my way out, I passed by the Monroe Crane building. Ryan was outside the front doors, mid-conversation on his cell, face red, gestures sharp and frantic. He hadn't noticed me yet, but I stopped, smoothed my jacket, walked right past him. And oh, the look when he finally saw me. His eyes narrowed, jaw tightened. I offered him the gentlest of smiles. "Afternoon, Ryan," I said. "How's your day going?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And me? I kept walking, because the best part wasn't that he fired me. It was that he didn't realize he'd already lost. By Thursday morning, the Monroe Crane office was in full crisis mode. I didn't even need to be there to know it. My inbox told me everything. First came an email from Ryan's assistant, poor girl, requesting a confidential off-the-record consultation. Then from legal, asking if I would consider a friendly clarification about the Kingsley clause. And finally from Ryan himself, subject line, "Let's talk for the good of the company." I didn't open that one. Instead, I forwarded it straight to my new lawyer. Yes, my lawyer. Because I knew exactly what Ryan was trying to do. Paint this as a misunderstanding. Reel me back in, just long enough to sign something, hand over something, rescue him from the fire he lit himself. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was the consequence. By noon, the press had caught wind of it. Not the full story yet, but enough. A leaked memo. A terminated senior exec. A high-profile contract suddenly stalled due to internal restructuring. I even got a call from a journalist I knew from a tech feature years ago. "You still with Monroe Crane?" "Not anymore," I said. "Why?" "Because sources say someone's about to fall. And I don't think it's you." She was right. But the real fall? That came at 2:12 p.m. That's when Mr. Monroe Sr. called me again. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Lily, I need to see you. In person. I'm flying in tonight." "You should have stayed in charge, Richard." He sighed. "I'm starting to realize that. I agreed to meet, not because I wanted to go back, but because I wanted it on the record." By 5:45 p.m., I was sitting across from the man who once gave me my career, and then handed the keys to a child who'd never earned a thing. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, more tired, but his eyes sharp as ever. "I'm not going to defend him," he said. "What he did to you was reckless, and it's going to cost us dearly. The Kingsley team won't return our calls." "I had coffee with them yesterday," I replied. "They're not angry, just disinterested." His brow furrowed. "Disinterested?" I smiled. "In your firm." He sat back. And that's when I said it. "I don't want my job back, Richard. I don't want to work under your son. And I sure as hell don't want to clean up his mess." "Then what do you want?" "I want the truth documented. That Ryan fired me, without review. That he ignored legal protocols. That the Kingsley fallout is entirely on him." He nodded slowly. "And if I give you that? Then I won't say anything more." He looked at me for a long moment. "You're not the kind of person to burn things down, Lily." "No," I said, rising to leave. "I just don't rebuild on sand." The next morning, I woke up to an inbox full of headlines. Monroe Crane faces turmoil after exec shakeup, top negotiators exit, leaves mega deal in limbo. Where's Lily Carter? Kingsley refuses to comment. Let them speculate. The truth was simple. I wasn't anyone's fallback. And Ryan? He was officially in the crosshairs. Around 10 a.m., I got the call from Kingsley's legal team confirming it. Richard Sutherland had decided to pause all further dealings with Monroe Crane indefinitely. Any future consideration would require new executive leadership. Translation, get rid of Ryan or we walk. I didn't celebrate. Not outwardly. But inside? I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel damn good. Because all I'd ever asked for, all I ever wanted was to be respected. To have my work recognized. To not be seen as some disposable middlewoman just because I didn't golf on Fridays or join the boys' club for overpriced cocktails. And now the same men who ignored me for years were watching their empire tilt on its axis because I stepped away. Not because I made a scene, but because I was missing. It turns out, when you're the quiet backbone of a company, your absence echoes louder than any protest ever could. At 11:21 a.m., I got a text from a number I hadn't seen in over a year. "Lily? It's Jules, your old Kingsley contact. I just heard what happened. Please say you're still available. We need someone to oversee a few major transitions. And by someone, I mean you." My fingers hovered over the screen. I wasn't just available. I was ready to lead on my terms. So I replied, "I'm interested, but I don't do middle seats anymore. If I'm coming in, it's at the head of the table." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Let's talk title, salary, and which corner office you want." I didn't plan to see him again. But fate? Fate has a wicked sense of humor. I was walking out of a lunch meeting with Kingsley's transition team. Yes, my team now. When I stepped into the elevator of the Westline building and came face to face with him, Ryan Monroe, still in his too slim blazer, still holding that same overpriced tablet he didn't know how to use. And for once, he wasn't talking, just blinking. "Lily," he said, like I might not remember my own name. "I've been trying to reach you." I stepped into the elevator calmly, pressed the lobby button, and said nothing. He followed, eyes darting nervously. "Look, I'll admit I moved too fast. I wasn't fully briefed. Legal didn't tell me about the contract clause." "You mean the clause on page 11? I said, voice cool. "The one in bold?" He flushed. "I didn't mean to." "You did mean to, Ryan. That's the point." He swallowed hard, clearly scrambling. "Lily, we're both professionals. There's no need to drag this out. I'm willing to offer your job back. Even a raise," I laughed. It wasn't a loud, cackling laugh. No, it was soft, dangerous. The kind of laugh that says you really don't get it, do you? "I'm not coming back, Ryan," I said, turning toward him fully now. "And for the record, that was my job. You didn't offer me anything that wasn't already mine. What you did was steal. Poorly." His jaw tightened. "I was trying to move the company forward. No, you were trying to play king. You just didn't know the crown belonged to someone else." The elevator chimed. "Lobby?" I stepped out, but then paused just long enough to deliver the final cut. "You know, Ryan, I used to think the worst thing a man like you could be was arrogant." He raised an eyebrow. "But I was wrong," I added. "The worst thing is arrogant and incompetent." Then I walked out, heels clicking like a gavel down the polished floor, and left him standing there. And from that moment on, I didn't look back. I was still smiling from the elevator showdown when my phone rang. Unknown number. New York area code. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. "Lily Carter speaking." "Ms. Carter," came a smooth, confident voice. "My name is Ava Torres. I'm calling on behalf of Valor Capital Partners." I stood still. Valor was no joke. They weren't a stepping stone. They were the staircase. "We've been following the recent developments at Monroe Crane. Your name keeps surfacing," Ava continued, "specifically in relation to the Kingsley Global account and your strategic departure." I arched a brow. "You could say that. We'd like to bring you on as a consulting partner. Short term, high impact. You'd oversee 3 portfolio companies, one of which is directly competing with Monroe Crane. Let's just say, we value your expertise." Now that was a poetic way of saying we want you to help bury the people who underestimated you. "And the compensation?" I asked, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to hear her say it. "Mid-6 figures for a 9-month engagement," she replied, without missing a beat. "Discretionary bonuses included." I didn't say yes right away, because this was no longer about rushing. This was about choosing. "Send the proposal to my personal email," I said. "I'll review it tonight." "Of course. And Ms. Carter," she added, "we've never seen someone handle a corporate takedown so cleanly. Impressive work." "Thank you," I said, my voice warm but firm. But that wasn't a takedown. There was a pause. That was self-defense. We ended the call, and I stood in the middle of the sidewalk, the late afternoon sun filtering through the city trees like spotlight shards. Everything around me buzzed: the taxis, the phones, the caffeine-charged chatter of working professionals. But inside, I was still, grounded, unshakable. Not because I had power now, because I'd finally owned it. The email came in at 6:03 p.m. Subject, "Can we talk?" From Rachel L., head of legal Monroe Crane. I stared at it for a moment. Not because I didn't expect it, but because I remembered the last time Rachel looked me in the eye. It was 3 weeks ago. We were in the break room, and she'd just come out of a budget meeting with Ryan. "Careful," she whispered, half joking. "He's got that look in his eye again." I had laughed then. But now? Now she was emailing me with a very different tone. "Lily, I know things ended badly. I should have spoken up, and I didn't. I regret that. We all do. Ryan, well, you've seen the headlines. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. No expectations, just coffee. From one woman in this industry to another." I stared at the message longer than I should have. Because this was what happens when you stop playing nice. People who once dismissed you start seeing you clearly. They remember the favors you granted, the grace you extended, the professionalism you never stopped showing even when they didn't deserve it. And when you finally pull your power back, they scramble. I didn't reply right away. I needed to think. But that wasn't the only surprise in my inbox. At 6:42, another message. This time, from Nathan. My old boss. The man who built the company with Richard Monroe. The man who'd quietly retired after health concerns, only to resurface on LinkedIn 2 days ago as a board advisor for Valor Capital, the same firm that had just offered me a consulting position. "Lily, he never appreciated you." "I did. I still do. Let me know if you're open to something bigger than cleaning up his mess." And just like that, it all clicked. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclamation. The same men who had watched me build their success from the ground up were now coming back not to offer advice, but to ask for mine. I met Rachel for coffee the next day. Neutral spot. Downtown cafe. Public enough to keep it professional. Quiet enough to say the things that mattered. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a back table, fiddling with her wedding band the way she always did when she was nervous. "Lily," she said as I approached, standing to greet me, "you look, well." "I am," I said simply, slipping into the seat across from her. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, weather, headlines, the absurdity of coffee prices, and then, finally, she exhaled. "I owe you an apology." I didn't stop her. "I saw what Ryan was doing," she said, "and I let it happen. I convinced myself it wasn't my place, that I had to protect my own role, that maybe you'd land on your feet anyway. But that's not an excuse." "No," I said softly. "It's not." She nodded, swallowing hard. "But I appreciate you saying it now." She looked surprised. Maybe she expected me to gloat. Maybe she thought I'd snap back or wave her apology away with cold indifference. But that's not who I am. Not even now. "You're not the only one calling," I added. Nathan reached out, her eyebrows lifted. "He did? Valor Capital, too. They've got some interesting opportunities." Rachel took a sip of her coffee, nodding slowly. I figured. "The industry's buzzing. Word is, Monroe Crane might not survive this quarter without Kingsley." I raised a brow. "And whose fault is that?" "His," she said, without hesitation. "But we're all paying the price." There it was. The confession. And the invitation. "So what are you really here to ask, Rachel?" She hesitated, then leaned in, voice low. "If we make some changes, real ones, you'd come back?" I laughed. Not mean, but genuine. Rachel flinched. "I don't return to broken homes," I said. "But I do renovate from the outside." She looked confused, so I clarified. "You want a future? You bring me on as a private consultant. Short term, independent. I work with Nathan. I report to no one under 50. I choose my clients. And I don't ever set foot in that building unless the man who fired me is gone." Rachel's eyes widened. "And you think they'd go for that?" I smiled. "I don't care if they do. Because here's the thing. When you've rebuilt your own worth brick by brick, you don't wait for someone to hand you the blueprint. You become the architect." The next chapter unraveled on Tuesday. Funny how something so catastrophic can hit on such an ordinary day. No lightning. No dramatic music. Just an internal memo that leaked before it ever hit the send button officially. Subject: interim leadership appointment from board of directors, Monroe Crane 2, executive team effective immediately. Ryan Monroe has been placed on administrative leave pending review of contractual oversight and breach of fiduciary responsibilities. Nathan Bradford will assume temporary operational oversight. It spread through the company like wildfire. By 9:12 a.m., my phone was pinging nonstop. Is it true? He's out? They just shut down his access badge. Did you see what he posted on LinkedIn? I didn't need to. I was already meeting Nathan at the Valor Capital office, high above the noise, with floor-to-ceiling windows and espresso that actually tasted like coffee. Want to see it? He asked, sliding his tablet across the table. There it was, a single-sentence resignation posted under Ryan Monroe's profile, clearly ghostwritten by someone from PR who'd lost the will to spin. After careful consideration, I've decided to step away from Monroe Crane to pursue new opportunities. Translation? He got pushed, and everyone knows it. I sipped my espresso. Careful consideration. That's adorable, Nathan chuckled. I'd call it poetic. Then he sobered. We're still reviewing the Kingsley contract fallout. It'll cost the firm 7 figures, possibly more, when the clients finish reassessing their vendor agreements. I met his gaze. That's not my problem. No, he said. It's not. He paused, then added, but there's a seat at the table if you want it. I tilted my head. You offering me the throne, Nathan? He didn't flinch. I'm offering you the blueprint. Build whatever throne you like. And just like that, the game flipped. Again. The word was spreading quietly, but confidently. Lily Carter wasn't just the one who got fired. She was the one who held the keys. Monroe Crane had started quietly scrubbing mentions of my departure from their digital spaces, removing me from old press releases, editing footnotes, pretending I had been a mere footnote in their success. Too late. By now, my story had legs, and those legs were wearing 6-inch heels and walking straight into advisory boards, investment roundtables, and high-powered client meetings. Clients weren't just calling, they were asking for me by name. A boutique agency reached out to license my negotiation playbook. A women in tech leadership group asked me to keynote their conference. And Kingsley? They sent me a gift basket that cost more than my first apartment rent. But it wasn't about gifts. It was about acknowledgement. Every offer I received, every door that opened, was a reminder. I didn't just survive. I redefined what survival looked like. That night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't recognize it at first. The voice. It was tired, worn down, stripped of its smug confidence. But then I heard it. Ryan. Lily. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. And I don't blame you. Look, I didn't understand what you were worth to the company. I do now. Too late, I know. But I'm sorry. I hope someday you'll believe that. I didn't replay it. Didn't save it either. Because the truth is, I didn't need an apology from Ryan. I didn't need closure from a man who couldn't see past his own reflection. I had already closed the chapter myself. And the next one? It had my name on the cover. I stood, stretched, and looked out over my city. Behind me, a decade of loyalty, betrayal, and undervaluation. Ahead of me, legacy. I didn't realize it at first, how far it reached. I was just doing what I've always done, showing up, doing the work, keeping receipts, and refusing to shrink for anyone's comfort. But when the emails started coming in, it hit me. Subject: you inspired me. Subject: thank you. Subject: I left too. Women I'd worked with. Women I'd never worked with. Women in finance, in law, in education, each one sharing some version of the same story. I watched what they did to you, and how you handled it. And I realized I've been swallowing my voice for years. I turned in my notice yesterday. My manager always told me I was too assertive. I stopped apologizing after you spoke at that round table. I finally pitched my own firm. Because you made me believe I could. At first, it was overwhelming. A wave of emotions I hadn't braced for. But then, it was grounding. Because we always talk about being strong, but no one talks about how lonely it can feel. How you can doubt yourself, even as you're rising. How silence can feel safer than speaking, until one brave voice cuts through. I hadn't set out to be anyone's example, but maybe that's the point. The best kind of influence doesn't scream, it whispers to the woman behind you. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to demand it. At Valor, I started mentoring a few younger analysts, quiet ones, smart as hell but always deferring, always second-guessing. One afternoon, after a client pitch, I caught one of them, Elise, apologizing for her own brilliance. "Sorry," she mumbled. "I probably came on too strong." I cut her off gently. "Elise, don't you ever apologize for being the smartest voice in the room. You make them catch up." She blinked at me. And then, slowly, she smiled. That's how it starts. One woman standing tall. Then another. And another. Until the silence breaks. Smai.